Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and I bet you haven't seen one of these before. This is Mini's new bonkers creation, the 2021 Cooper JCW GP. We got Chris from the Topher here helping us cover this car. We figured there's 2 seats, so why not fill them with 2 butts? And Chris and I are actually going to spend quite a good bit of time in this car over this week and this weekend, because not only are we taking it out now, we're going to take it to a track day. Now, Mini's only making 3,000 of these extra hot hatches. It's packing 301 horsepower. That changed a little bit from the initial announcement back in 2019. It's got 225 width tires, and all the power is being sent to the front wheels, which we will see the results of that as we get behind the wheel. And it's also packing 20 GP badges around the car.
Oh my gosh.
You thought BMW's M and AMG like to do badges, but you'll go around and you'll notice that there are 20 GP badges. But
each wheel, front grille, spoiler,
back deck, floor mats, door sills, steering wheel,
wow,
they're everywhere. You'll notice these carbon composite extensions here for the body. Rather than widening the car, they simply added these little extensions to give the car more width and cover the wheels. And because of that, you can't take it through automatic car washes for fear of them getting broken, but it does add a very unique look to the car. I can't exactly say I love it, but it's functional, so you got to kind of appreciate that.
In the autocross, when you hit a cone, this is your automatic cone protection system.
There you go. It keeps the paint good.
Exactly.
What's not functional is most of this grille and this hood scoop, but there is a good amount of breathing in there, and this engine needs it because this little 2-liter is a fire breather. Other than that, I do like the paint color. I like the combinations. This wing, no doubt, is extremely functional, but it is large. I will say that. Oh, this
crazy shape.
This flap is actually rubber. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really functional stuff on there. You could tell the engineers were allowed to really go crazy.
Definitely. Yep.
And at $46,000, I would hope so. $46,000, and you don't even get rear seats with that. What you get is a very vocal rear stabilizer bar. What would the official term for that be?
It's not a rear strut tower bar, but just a
stiffening chassis brace. Yeah, there we go. You got a deep trunk in there with an inflation kit underneath the carpet. And as Alyssa put it, it's probably the most cargo space you'll get in the Mini Cooper.
It's true, yeah. I mean, you're not really going to use the rear seats in one of these except for anything but a shelf anyways.
Right. Yep.
Might as well save the weight, but it is very light in the rear.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you can almost get this thing to oversteer. It's pretty exciting. So let's get in behind the wheel and go experience that.
Cool.
Get a little GP logo flashing up there on the gauge cluster as the car starts up. No sort of active exhaust, but there are a satisfying amount of little pops and burbles, and it's got a nice rumbly rumble to it.
I'm sure there are some good aftermarket options.
Yes, I'm sure there are. In fact, you can probably even get Minis. They make like that Bluetooth.
Oh, do they? Really? With a
Yeah, have you ever seen one of those from Mini or BMW?
valve?
Yeah, there's a valve that you control with a little trigger.
Oh,
that's
cool.
Bluetooth connection.
That's badass.
Yeah, we had some JCWs with that last year, and it was something else.
Little pops and bangs.
Huge pops and bangs. It's crazy. Yeah. The ride isn't harsh, but you feel just about everything.
I still think it's better than the Focus RS.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
It's livable.
There's a level of compliance that's actually remarkable for the size of these tires and firmness. And some of that might have to do with the weight. They may be able to spring it a little lighter just because of the weight of the car. I'd have to imagine a Focus RS is a good 500 pounds heavier than this.
Yeah.
But also 3 seats more practical. So, and you get a manual. But this does pack BMW's venerable ZF 8-speed. You can't get much better than that transmission. They put it in all sorts of different cars, and it's so direct that it can be super smooth when you're just putzing along, but then when you want to paddle shift on these nice metal pedals or just let the car shift itself in D or S mode, it'll bang you to the back of the seat.
And there is even a hidden mode with a traction control button, right?
Yeah, they did a lot of you can see there's a lot of simplicity in here, including in the back there are just cut out holes where speakers could go in a normal JCW Mini. And this whole center thing is just a carryover. And rather than put any sort of different marker on here, they just put the traction control button, but when you click it, you get GP mode activated, both in the center console and in the gauges. And then it sort of livens up the engine, sort of allows there to be a little bit of wheel slippage without full defeat, which you can still do in this car. You can turn every single bit of stability control off for full hoon mode. The amount of power is just crazy. You don't really notice it from a start the way you do with a lot of all-wheel drive cars these days, or electric vehicles, or even like the Corvette, for example. Rear-wheel drive with the perfect launch control gets you 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. This car takes 5 seconds to go 0 to 60, but it's when you're just cruising along here. I'm doing very fast speeds,
but 30 to 70, that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean 78. If I bury it up this hill, it still pulls us back and gets going very quick.
There's a small amount of torque steer at any speed.
Sometimes it's a large amount of torque steer. Yeah. Let's see right here. That time we managed to stay nice and straight. No, sometimes the torque steer will really catch you off guard, and there hasn't been a modern car that I've driven that's had torque steer like this.
I think it's exciting, torque steer, though. I
do.
I never understood journalists bashing of torque steer because it was engaging. It was kind of exciting, and the Mazda Speed 3, okay, was maybe a little bit excessive, but also at the same time, manufacturers have completely gotten rid of it, and it leaves you feeling a little bit numb, and this adds some excitement to the driving experience, at least.
Journalists criticize torque steer for the same reason they criticize cheap plastics inside a car. It's just an easy, low-hanging fruit for them to criticize. They're not actually thinking about what it does for the driving experience or the ownership experience of the car. They're just looking for things to criticize. If I actually had to criticize something in this car, it would be the steering feel. I know that was something you mentioned in your initial impressions of the car. Very numb. I think you said uncomfortably numb was one of your taglines for the car. And I've got to agree with you. It does kind of have that filtered, woolly feeling of modern Minis and BMWs. And it's a bit of a disappointment for what this car is. It's this big, thick, chunky steering wheel. It feels like you're navigating a luxury, high-end, heavy BMW, when really this should be a kind of a finger-light, BRZ, Miata style, steer with one hand, kind of, when you're just putzing along. Very direct steering. But we'll go over some bumps here in a little while, and you'll see the steering wheel doesn't even twitch.
There's no communication whatsoever. But there's a lot of, it talks to you a lot through the chassis, and through the front wheels and tires, and you can kind of feel the car move around you, but yeah, the steering's completely numb.
And that's a criticism of most modern BMWs. The M2, for example, there was an editor, David Beard at Car and Driver, said something along the lines of, you have to put a lot of trust in the vehicle because you're just going to point the steering and hope that what you tell it to do happens. And that's kind of the same in this. I mean, you trust that it's going to happen, but you're not getting any feedback back from the car saying, "Yep, I gotcha. We're gonna take care of this together."
Yeah, and also, I mean, a lot of electronic racks are super direct too, and responsive, and this lacks a little bit of that directness. So, even if there wasn't feel, if it were more direct, I think that would make a difference and that would help.
I agree.
But there's still just a little bit of a delay and a lag in the response to this. This is going to be so much fun on track.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to Waterford Hills later this week, which is the perfect race course for this car. It'll be the quickest thing out there.
Yeah, people are going to really be impressed with how this car actually walks the walk. Because it certainly talks the talk, looking at it, seeing the wing and the graphics and everything. But it can back it up. I mean, we just did that on-ramp at 70 miles per hour.
It's insane.
Yeah. When I first got this car earlier this week, I sort of shrugged it off as, all right, well, it's fine and good that Mini was able to do this, but who is this car really for? Why would anyone really buy this unless they were just swimming with money? But after spending some time with it, getting some groceries, kind of doing a little bit more casual driving on top of the fun driving, I could see how someone would want this to be their daily driver. It's not quite as harsh as some of the other performance cars out there. And if you were someone who were willing to live with a 2-seater convertible or sports car or something like that, you could definitely live with this car. It's more practical in terms of cargo space, and as long as you don't need to regularly take more than one passenger, you're good to go.
Yeah, it's totally livable.
Yeah.
And it just looks cool. It's fun. It's got a sense of humor. It's
Yeah.
a little bit insane.
Yep. Oh yeah. In a way that not many new cars are.
With the right exhaust on this car, it would be it'd be almost perfect for what it is. 65, that's insane. That's amazing.
I don't think anything necessarily needs to change with the exhaust, though. I think for a 2-liter turbo, the fact that it sounds the way it does, I don't think they're really piping in much sound. If they are...
There's that weird BMW exhaust speaker sound, but yeah.
I suppose it was just driven so many, I've gotten numb to it.
Yeah, I'm a little sensitive to that type of stuff. But yeah, with the remote control exhaust, awesome. In this car.
But yeah, the way that things just get yanked around.
Yeah.
Look at that. Just kind of directed me right over there.
Like 80 miles an hour.
Yep. You have to be awake, alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic to drive this car around. It reminds me of the Mustang GT350, especially the first, like 2017, 2018 model years, when they would tramline horribly. If you were on a country road doing 60,
Yep.
all of a sudden the car would just yank off in one direction or another. Super unpredictable.
That and the 370Z tram line.
Ah, I didn't pick up on that.
The tuning on this 8-speed is really good too.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I do typically shift it myself, but you can totally get away with just leaving it in S mode, especially if you're regularly driving hard and fast.
And you know, this actually, maybe it's just the tires and the extra grip, but this feels more planted than a lot of Mini Coopers that I've driven in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they used to be way more twitchy and tail happy than this, and you can drive this with a lot of confidence and not feel like you're going to oversteer into a shrub.
It almost builds confidence in some way, but then it'll yank it right away from you.
And you've had more seat time in this than I have too.
Yep, well, let's change that a little bit right now. We'll let you drive on back.
There's some fans going.
Oh yeah, plenty of fans on this 89-degree day.
The driving position is fantastic.
It is. 2855. Less than a Veloster N by 181 pounds, 266 less than a Civic Type R, 518 less than the Golf R.
Okay. So still a little heavier than I thought it would be. Usually stuff like this comes in around 26, 27, but that's not bad.
Right, especially you'd think without having the seats and everything.
Yeah. I think we may have reached the ideal 8-speed automatic situation, because this lacks the harshness and the bucking off the line of a dual clutch. Even though it's kind of tuned to kind of give you this feel like the clutch is releasing.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's just so smooth when you want it to be. And I love that about it.
The only downside is you find yourself always having to slow down for traffic everywhere you go. You're like, what? You guys can't pull a G just casually here?
This is
Come on.
one of the few front-wheel drive cars, next to maybe the Type R, that feels almost too fast for the street.
Yep.
And I was flat out through that corner. It held its line, no understeer. And I did have a little bit of steering feel that kicked in at the limit, so that's good. Maybe we just need to get this thing on track and do some limit handling, and get some more communication from those front wheels.
That is what most reviews say, is that it's really just at home on a track. But if this were the only one BMW product that had poor steering, then I'd give it a little more benefit of the doubt, but it's not exactly a surprise.
I like how simple, too, the car is to drive. I mean, I'm not constantly switching modes. I'm not pressing buttons down here. If I want to kick down a gear, I just floor it or push this over for a minute.
Yep.
And sport mode is doing a really nice job selecting its own gears.
The speed with which the ZF8 speed downshifts is just, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's never hunting for gears either. I mean, obviously this is a light, powerful car, but even a ZF8 speed in something big and heavy, it's kind of always in the right gear.
BMW's nailed their tuning on that, every application.
Yep.
What kind of gas mileage have you been getting in this?
Well, I've only taken it on one small drive that I haven't been hooning it, and I was getting well up into the 30s.
That's nice.
I think EPA is totally doable. It's like mid-20s, 30 on the highway. Like most BMW products, you could get that no problem.
Sure.
But it's hard to keep your foot out of it.
It takes premium.
Yes, it does take premium. There's something refreshing about just being in such a small car, too. You feel dicey. I feel similar in this to how I do on my motorcycle. I feel like I'm light and nimble and I can fit in small places. There's a little bit of self-consciousness that you have to make sure you're not sitting around in blind spots or anything like that. But it's kind of satisfying.
This is a great size, and I get into a car this size and miss what it's like to drive small cars, because we're so used to SUVs and big sedans and crossovers these days that something like this is just charming. And
Yep.
it's not low enough that you feel like everything is towering above you, but it's the right size where you can just kind of find little gaps in traffic, and you don't have to worry about clipping your rear wheel on a curb and taking that wide late apex around 90-degree corners. It's so placeable on the road, and it's fun.
The more I think about it, the more I think Mini did the right thing here. What they did is they allow their engineers to go back to building a bonkers JCW. Years ago, JCW products were so raw that they were borderline undrivable on the roads. I mean, they were not supposed to be luxury cars. They were light, rattly, not fun to drive Minis. Well, I mean, they were fun to drive, but they weren't fun to live with.
But you stepped out of them sweating, got a headache, pounding, had to take some, medicine.
Yeah.
This you could be fine.
You could be fine, but it is that level of craziness above anything else that Mini makes. And I'm glad that the bean counters at Mini allowed the engineers to sort of do that. Said, yeah, go ahead, have fun. Cost more or less isn't really an issue. And what else they did is they limited it to 3,000 units. So you're gonna have something special. If you're gonna fork up big money for this car, you do feel like you're getting a special product. Whereas if they hadn't limited it, if they had just made this the JCW car, I think you'd get a lot more flack from people saying that costs way too much. So I think for the right buyer, this was really cool that Mini did this, and it shows that they do still care. Because I don't know about you, but I was getting a little worried there for a little while with all the Countrymen's and all-wheel drive things, that Mini was pretty much just going to be a nothing brand in 10 years.
No, it's true. It's good that they are catering to their performance-minded enthusiast. I would like a manual transmission, but that's okay. This automatic is so good, you almost don't need it.
Yep.
Bumps.
Would you have interest in trying a handbrake turn around that corner back there?
Perhaps.
If you fully defeat everything, you can slide this right around. Yep. There you go, hoon mode.
I mean, it's so great that this still has a handbrake.
Yep. Make sure there's no big pine cones. You might...
That was awesome.
That's a lot of fun.
It's a strong handbrake.
It is. It really grips and rips.
Yeah.
The first time I did it, it threw me off. Fortunately, I was filming, but I was like, wow, you can... I was expecting it to just kind of kill it and come to a stop, but no.
That's some first handbrake turn. Just perfection. What do you think about this versus Veloster-N? Because the Veloster-N is arguably as crazy, not as powerful, and not really that tunable. This is probably a much faster car, but the Veloster-N's like 15 to 20 grand cheaper than this.
I was thinking about that because the Civic Type R, I'm not a huge fan of it just because I think it takes itself too seriously on the street. It's a scalpel on the track, but we spend most of our lives off of the track. And I know some people really love the Civic Type R, but I almost find it a little bit boring. It's like you mat the throttle, you get up to your speed really fast, you're blown away, and then that's it. The tires are so thin and everything. I find the Veloster to be much more fun in terms of a hoonability standpoint, and you're making these silly juvenile pops. It's just kind of a fun, throwable little car. I feel like this is the Veloster N for someone who doesn't want to be seen driving a Hyundai. And I guess I don't mean that in a critical way. I guess I mean it more like this is probably going to be an older clientele. They don't want that poppy exhaust. They want the exclusivity of a car that's only being sold in 3,000 units. And they want a car that they're going to show up to any Cars and Coffee and they're not going to see a total pimped out version of their car sitting next to them.
Probably not even going to see a version of their car sitting next to them.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure if we drove this back to back with a Veloster N, we'd go, no, there's no way we could recommend buying this over a Veloster. I mean, the sound system's worse, the materials are decent, but the driving experience does feel a little bit more special and track focused and just capable than a Veloster N. But in terms of day-to-day funness, I think the Veloster's got it beat, especially with its manual. And we'll have to get the Veloster in dual clutch form, and then that'll really tell us.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Definitely.
But this is definitely going to be one to remember, and there really aren't too many brand new cars here in 2020 that stand out like this in the way it does with its torque steer and just silliness. You know, we got to even out the rear tire wear with the front tire wear.
They lock up on demand.
Yeah, it's like a drift stick.
There it is.
I think it sounds quite good. How about you hop out and we'll get your opinion. I'll give it some revs for you. Yeah, there's definitely a heft to it.
In neutral, it revs up all the way.
Okay.
It's a nice tuned sound, and with the open rear, there's no drone.
No.
That's cool.
Yeah. We didn't end up doing the highway fuel economy test on this vehicle. We just thought, if you're one of 3,000 people buying this car, then you're not going to care about fuel economy.
You'll probably just average like 25 in this no matter how you drive it.
Exactly. Well, I think on the highway it'll easily do 30. Minis and BMWs typically do quite well.
Probably 35 on the highway.
Right. But mixed driving.
Mixed driving.
Yeah, it's so hard to keep your foot out of the throttle that you'll be getting pretty medium fuel economy. But hope you guys enjoyed kind of seeing this unique take on what Mini's up to these days. Really appreciate Chris from the Topher coming out and taking a look at this car with us as well. He's going to spend some time with it now and sort of see what he thinks. See if the car grows on him the way it sort of did with me. It does kind of look like it's got lipstick on its face. I will give it that.
Is that or a bloody nose like it just got into a bar fight?
Either is probably, yeah, it'd be a pub fight.
Pub fight, yeah.
Yes, pub brawl. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, hit that subscribe button. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.